Welcome aboard the cosmic journey that is the Spirituality with Ashley podcast, where we dive deep into the mystical realms of metaphysics and spirituality. I'm your host, Ashley, a certified Akashic Records reader and energy healer and trained psychic medium. You're in the right place if you're ready to expand your consciousness and unlock the wisdom and insights that light up our paths of self-discovery and growth. If you enjoy the show, please give it a 5-star rating and share it with friends and family. Come along with me on this journey of exploration where the universe speaks and we listen with open hearts. Let's dive in. Hello, hello, welcome back, or welcome if you're here for the first time. All right, guys, today we're going to keep it kind of casual, and I have some very, very basic notes that I'm going to be working with. So I'm doing that because we're having a chill day. I'm recording this on a Sunday, and I'm going to be talking about my personal experience. And so I was like, I don't really want to do too much of an outline for this because I want to keep it very authentic and real. And I feel like I always try to keep it authentic and real, but I feel like I'm going to be doing a lot of storytelling today. So as you may have noticed from the title of this podcast episode, I'm going to be talking about when I went through my first spiritual awakening that I was aware of, the first really big one that I had in 2020. I had it toward, I would say the middle of 2020, and my clairsenses started coming online. I started meditating for like hours every day. When I first started meditating, I was listening to guided meditations, and I would meditate for, I think I tried to meditate for about 10 to 15, 20 minutes. I was listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks, and I remember her, or Esther, the channeler for Abraham, Esther Hicks, her explaining that she started meditating just to, create some space in her mind, in her energy, be in the moment. And she would do it for 20 minutes at a time. And that's how she got in contact with Abraham and started channeling. And I was so interested in channeling. I've always been so fascinated by it. I mean, since I've been into spirituality and been like exploring this world. And so I started meditating for about 20 minutes ish, and quickly learned that it was such a great practice for learning how to relax. And I'm a very I don't want to keep reiterating that I'm a high stress person because I'm trying to flip that narrative for myself. But back in the day, I used to be very high stressed, and I wasn't able to allow myself to relax. And so when I started meditating, oh my gosh, it was like getting a 3-hour massage, but so much faster than actually lying there for 3 hours. Like the amount of relaxation that I started experiencing created an addiction to meditating. And so I started meditating all the time, and it opened up so many doors. And I wasn't aware of all of the things that I'm aware of now. So when a lot of my clairsenses started really kicking into high gear, I had no idea. I didn't understand the experiences I was having, and I was listening to external input from other people, my mom, and it led me to have a negative perspective about the things that I was experiencing. And so part of the reason that I want to do this episode is to help other people to understand, because I have people that message me and ask me about some of their experiences. And so I want to share this one to give you an idea of what it can look like when you start experiencing clairaudience. And I'm also going to share the first clear channeled message that I ever received, where the voice was different from mine. It wasn't my thoughts, because a lot of the time when I'm getting intuitive messages, it'll sound like my thoughts, but there are also times when I'm being really good about my spiritual practices and my energy hygiene and all that stuff, and I'm really dialed in and connecting very well, because it's an ebb and a flow, just like everything in life. And when I'm doing that, I can distinguish between different personalities, different voices, different accents. It's really interesting. So when I first started channeling, it was so new, and I was just so excited that it was even happening because it didn't take very long. I think it took maybe 2 months of me. I wasn't even really trying to channel. I don't think I was just going on these adventures in my meditations, and then I was super into crystals and meditation, and I loved watching Ruben Langdon's interviews with ET on interviews with extra dimensionals on Gaia, and I also really liked Matthias DiStefano, and I think that, yeah, and I watched a lot of Joe Dispenza. And so anyway, that is kind of like how it all started in my spiritual awakening. And I wanted to share this channeled message because I feel like it applies all the time. It's just such good guidance. And it's just kind of explaining life and how we're supposed to approach life. And I love it. And at the time when I got the channeled message, I had just quit my job. I'd gotten into tech. So I'd gotten divorced. I had to completely start over from scratch. No car, no job, no money, no more husband, no dog. I had to rehome my dog. It was a very tumultuous period in my life. And I've started over a lot. I have done this multiple times, and I just feel like I'm not going to say it gets easier. I think it's starting to get more familiar for me, where I'm starting to recognize the pattern when it happens. And so it's helping me to be more confident when those phases come up in my life. And anyway, though, so I just quit my first tech job that I'd gotten after switching into that industry. And I was trying to figure out where to go from there. I thought I wanted to freelance. My mom wanted to move to Maine to find our soulmates. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm here for some adventure. I'm down for adventures. And something started kind of nagging at me. My intuition. It was my intuition. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to move to Maine. And I don't, I don't know if I'm all on board with the whole soulmates being in Maine thing. Like, what are the chances? So I ended up not going to Maine, and that was the best choice. I'm so glad that I listened to my intuition. It happened at the very last minute. My mom was very disappointed. She did not understand. But at that point, I'd already quit my job. I'd already given up my apartment. Like, I'd broken my lease, which led to some financial annoyances that I had to deal with for a few months. And I had free time. And so I was on my way to visit my mom. I was driving in my car on the highway. It was about an 8-hour drive from where I was at in Georgia to where she was at in North Carolina. And I think I'd been on the road for a few hours. So I was kind of in this like focused or non-focused alpha state. I was just driving. I think I was listening to a podcast or music. And I remember the semi truck went by on my right side. And then all of a sudden, I started hearing a male voice, very clear. And I was actually going to wait to share what the channeled message was, but here we are. So I'm just going to go ahead and share it. And this happened on November 23rd, 2020. So this male voice came in. It was like this stream of consciousness. It just dropped into my brain and started going, like as if somebody popped into the seat beside me as I was driving and started speaking. And so this is what the male voice, and it sounded very calm. I felt super calm. And I now understand that when you're channeling and you're connecting with friendly, positive, good energies, you will be able to tell from the way that you're feeling. If you feel calm, if you feel at peace, if you feel safe, if you feel loving energy, if you feel positive things, then you're connected with positive, loving energies. So that's how I felt. I was very calm. I felt really focused because I was driving, and I heard the voice come in, and I was like, oh my God, this is not my voice. I'm channeling. Holy crap. And it just happened. It wasn't like I started channeling and it was kind of like grainy or not super clear. Like, it just, the first time I channeled, super clear. And it was through my clairaudience. And after I share this message, I want to get into kind of like some of the initial experiences, the first signs and sensations when my clairaudience started cutting on, because it got super interesting and super weird for me. And then I also am going to talk about like some of the ways that clairaudience can manifest for people, just to give you guys an idea, because I did a poll. I know I'm jumping around. I'm sorry, guys. I will circle it back around. I did a poll on my stories on Instagram, I think. And I asked everybody, like, what is your dominant clairsense? And nobody said clairaudience, which I was like, oh, and I think it's one of the less common ones because so many people talk about clairvoyance, where you have clear seeing, you see visions, you have vivid dreams, you see things, and claircognizance, where you get downloads. A lot of people talk about getting downloads. And a lot of people also talk about clairsentience, where you're empathic, you can feel people's emotions, you can feel sensations in your body, and you get intuitive messages that way. But I don't hear or experience a lot of people talking about their clairaudience. And we all have the ability to develop all of our clairsenses, but I think there are more common dominant clairsenses. And especially now that I've been interacting with people in this space for a while, and I've been following a lot of like things, I don't know, doing research and taking in content. And yeah, clairaudience isn't talked about as much. I'm noticing that it's being talked about a little bit more now. I'm seeing more people who are clairaudient. I'm honestly not sure if that's my dominant gift. I think my dominant gift is clairsentience. You know what? It's so funny. I love doing readings for people and I don't do it for myself. Just not sure what my dominant one is. I know that I use I think I use all of them actually, if we're being honest. I wanted to develop them all and I use them all. Some more than others, but I generally use all of them. So anyway, we're going to get into all of that. So I heard this voice and it said, "The path of your life was decided by you before you incarnated. You are presented with options throughout your travels down this road. Each option is a choice leading to a different experience. The road will always take you to the same places that you decided to go before you incarnated. Some choices lead you down a path that includes more obstacles, while other choices will lead you down a path of fun and ease. To follow the path of fun and ease and clarity, the path of least resistance, it's important to follow your feelings and listen to the messages. Your emotions and the feelings in your heart, your chest, the pressure in your head, your gut, these will tell you which choices will lead you in the direction that you originally wanted to go in, the direction that your soul knows that you want to go in. To remember who you are, you must increase your receptivity and let go of your beliefs. Surrender to the consciousness of thought and let go of the need to understand why. You will find that the path of least resistance will be revealed to you as you surrender and follow your desires. Your desires are like arrow signs pointing you toward the right choices to make based on what you want most in your life. When you use logic over feelings, this is like putting traffic cones in your path that lead you on detours away from your path of least resistance. Analysis is not necessary to follow your path. You know where you want to go, and you have that knowledge buried deep within you. Be receptive. Don't let distractions cloud your consciousness. End of transmission. I love that so much. So at the time, I don't think I finished explaining what was going on in my life. So I'd quit my job. I had to move out of my apartment. So I took this trip, again, spontaneity, adventures, Aries sun, intensity and passion, just getting out there and doing the thing, taking the first step, trend setting, being the initiator. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And I went to my friend's house, really good friends of mine. And I was like, hey guys, guess what? This is what I'm doing. I quit my job. I'm going to go to Maine with my mom. And they knew, they were my close friends. So they knew about my, I use the word tumultuous a lot, my tumultuous relationship with my mom. And they were like, oh, are you sure that's what you're going to do? You're going to go and just be you and your mom in the same Airbnb and in just together all the time? And I was like, yep. And I could tell from their tones. I was like, oh, okay. Babe, I can see where you guys are coming from and why you're having that kind of reaction. And so one of my friends, they were married. So, and I don't I don't know, I'm not going to say their names, but they're married. And so the guy was like, well, hey, I actually have a job lead for you. One of our people that works with us, who's a tech person, is quitting and she makes this amount of money. She makes $100,000 a year. My previous job, my first job that I quit, I was making 45 a year, which is very low entry level for tech. Tech as a software engineer, which is what I was, I built applications, I coded, I programmed, I wrote a lot of code and stuff. Usually the entry level for that kind of position is higher, considerably higher, like tens of thousands of dollars higher. And so I wasn't getting paid very much. I learned a ton though, which was great. And I just was excited to have my first job. And so when he was like, yeah, it's $100,000, I was like, I will stay here for $100,000 because I still loved tech. I still really I was into it. And I was like, okay, well, let me explore that. So I got the woman's information who had the position at the time and who was about to leave. And we spoke, I think in the car on the way when I was on the road trip and driving. And she was like, ooh, I told her all my qualifications and my experience and how I, just about me. And she was like, oh, I think you're going to be bored in this position and it might not be a good fit for you. And I was like, okay, well, thanks for, your honest opinion about that. And so I was kind of just floating around, just allowing life to happen, which is actually a very freeing place to be where you are in a wonderfully creative space when you're just like, I'm going to go with the flow. And it's so interesting because I told you I stress a lot, but I really wasn't just this free. I was on my spiritual junk, guys. Like I was living that energy of allowing. And I really want to attribute it to all the meditation I was doing because it helped lower my stress levels. It helped me to really be at peace. It helped me to be more receptive. And I was calm and I was open. And so I was getting these intuitive insights and I was just following the nudges without questioning them or needing to understand. I was taking the leap of faith. And every time I talk about this kind of stuff, like it reminds me of, oh, my microphone. It reminds me of Indiana Jones and the bridge, the invisible bridge over that chasm. And he like leapt out and landed on the bridge. He had faith. And that's what it's like following your intuition. You just have to believe that you're going to jump and land in a safe spot, or you'll land where you need to land for to be able to take your next steps. And so that message came through at such a perfect time to just validate the way that I was moving forward and to help me to stay in that place because I am an extremely analytical, very in my head, logical, intellectual person. And especially because of some experiences I've had in my early life. And I really rely a lot on logic and tend to veer away from emotions and being attached to like my physical form. And so like I was very detached and I wasn't even aware of it. And I was just, so yeah, super logical. And so when that message came through, it gave me so much clarity and like peace, like, hey, you're on the right path is basically how it felt to me. And I found it the other day. I was going through my phone and I was like, oh my gosh, because I got to my mom's and she had been expressing that I was telling her about the experiences that I was having and like the channeling and all of the really cool, I was like astral traveling when I was meditating. I didn't realize I was doing it. I thought I was just meditating. And then I learned about astral travel. And so I was telling her about all these adventures that I was having. It was so much fun. I didn't really care to watch movies. I didn't like meditating was the thing to do for me. Oh my gosh. It was like going on these vacations. I was meeting up with my spirit guides, like, oh, and I could do a podcast episode about like kind of what that was like and what those experiences were like at first too, at some point, because I think that's interesting because it's not like it is when I meditate now. When I meditate now, it's kind of like what I thought meditation was going to be like. And I don't always go on these adventures and see these really cool things. Sometimes I just get insights or feel nudges. So anyway, getting back on track. This is why I normally have extensive notes, but you know what? Keeping it casual, being authentic, jumping around like I do in real life. If you talk to me in real life, this is how I talk. I just jump around from one thing to another, but I feel like I cohesively bring it all together to my point So we just hang in here with me, guys. I'm all about giving some context and history and details to paint the bigger picture. Okay. So I got to my mom's, and she had been openly admitting that she felt jealous that she had, I'm using air quotes, been on her spiritual journey longer and wasn't having the same kinds of experiences that I was having. And she was excited. She would say that she was excited for me and she always wanted to hear about them. But then I would share them with her and she'd be like, oh man, how come you're experiencing that? Like, I want to experience that. That's not fair. And so I showed up and I told her about the channeled message. I was so excited. I was on cloud nine, and she kind of like shot me down unintentionally. My mom is a very sensitive person. She's a Pisces and extremely intuitive, and such a wonderful person. I love her so much. But we all have our things. We all have limiting beliefs and wounding and traumas and stuff that affect the way that we behave and interact with people. And as much as she loved me, sometimes she would say things that weren't super helpful, as we do to each other as humans, not faulting her at all. And I told her about that experience, and she was like, I'd also gotten into using my pendulum to communicate with like my spirit guides, and which, by the way, spoiler alert, I think I'm creating a little mini course to teach you guys how to do that. So stay tuned for that. It'll be coming up soon. But yeah, because using a pendulum really helped me to develop my intuition and like trust and gain the confidence. And so I think it's a really cool tool to get you started. But anyway, I'd been using my pendulum, and like any kind of spiritual experience I had, I shared with her. And so after I shared the channeling with her, she was like, I really wanted to tell you. And you know what? It's interesting. I was just all over the place. I had this nudge before I went on the trip to bring these energetically protective stones with me. I think one was amethyst. I brought another one too. I brought a couple. They were small and I kept them on me. Like I would put them in my bra. I learned it from my friend Chelsea. She would always put like crystals in her bra. And I loved it because it'll just sit right there and stay against my heart. And I would put them in my pocket, but I was always worried I'd forget to take them out of my pocket, and I didn't want to wash my little crystal buddies because they were like my little friends. Like you could feel their energy. They were my buddies, and they still are. And yeah, and something told me like, hey, you need to bring some of these crystals because it's going to get interesting and you're going to need to protect your energy. Because my mom and I had an extremely close relationship. And I say had because she passed. So have an extremely close relationship. It's different now. But we were very like tangled up together, entangled. And so her approval was very important to me. Her opinions, the things that she said very much affected and impacted me. And so something told me to bring these crystals, and I did. And it was for a good reason, because I got there and she was like, I need to tell you, I went into your records and I checked. And she did this often, which was disrespectful to me. I didn't know at the time. I was just like, oh, you're just trying to look out for me. I learned later that's actually extremely unethical. When I started learning how to read the Akashic records, I learned that that's unethical and you should never go into somebody's records without their permission. Every time you're going to go into someone's records, you need to get their permission. And she would just get somebody's permission the first time and then be all up in their junk. And like, that's not how that works. That was being nosy. Even if you're going in for a reason, like you want to help the person, you still need to get their permission. And anyway, so she'd been going into my records and continuously giving me information she was getting from asking these questions, air quotes, for me. And she'd gone in and apparently something told her that I was connecting with the negative things and that it was bad and that I needed to stop. And based on the things that I know now from my studies and experience, and, I understand now that because she was going into my records without my permission, she was getting skewed information. Because when you are not following the ethical guidelines of respecting energy and other people's sovereignty, there are, I want to say there are consequences. And so she wasn't getting super accurate, clear information when she was going in without my permission. And But I wasn't aware of all of that. And so I was like, oh no, it scared the crap out of me. I grew up watching horror movies. I was super into horror movies and like all the scary stuff. I loved horror movies because they were so realistic, because I've always believed in ghosts and aliens and all of the things and possession and all of that. And a lot of movies paint spiritual experiences in a negative light and make it very fear-based. And so when she said, oh, you're connecting with bad stuff, my brain immediately went to Paranormal Activity, Insidious, like all of that stuff. And I was like, oh no, shut it down now. So I stopped immediately. I stopped meditating. I stopped connecting. I stopped using my pendulum. I stopped everything because I was like, I am not about to get possessed. Nope, not today, Satan. And I say not today, Satan, jokingly, because I'm not religious and we're not even going to get into that though. So anyway, yeah, so I shut everything down and I ended up, there was this pull that brought me back to it, but for about a year, I think I still was into my crystals because I just loved crystals and incense. I think I eventually did I started meditating again, but it was very intentional. Actually, I understand now a lot of the experiences that I had, and I'm going to go into them a little bit around that time, were teaching me things that I needed to know that I didn't know I should be looking up. And so I learned to ground. I learned how to cleanse my aura, cleanse my energy, how to practice spiritual hygiene. I learned how to set my intention for who and what I wanted to connect with. I learned a lot of really valuable things. And so I'm not complaining about these experiences. They were extremely helpful and very useful. And again, I'm not faulting anyone. It all happened for a reason, for my betterment, for my growth. And I love having that perspective. And so when my clairaudience started kicking in, I didn't know it. And I think the first thing that happened, and I've spoken about this before a little bit, first thing that happened was I was in the shower. I lived by myself in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I was in the shower and I heard my name yelled, like screamed it sounded from about where my front door was in the apartment. Scared me so badly. I turned the shower off and I was like, what the heck? And I told you I love watching horror movies. Not even just spiritual horror movies, but like just horror in general. I loved all the gory stuff. And I don't anymore. I'm not here for it. But I did then. And so I got out of the shower and I went to explore because I was like, I can't live knowing that something is here. We're going to hit this. We're going to face this head on. And so I went out and I checked everywhere in my apartment. It wasn't giant, but I checked behind furniture, in closets. Like I checked everywhere. There was no one there. And I was like, I know I heard my name screamed. After that, again, I was in the shower and I wasn't really thinking about anything. The shower is my thinking place and where I'm just calm. And I often am just very receptive in there. I'm just focusing on like cleaning myself, letting the water fall on me. I love taking showers. And I heard this male voice with a British accent come in and he was like, hi. And I was like, hi. I don't remember if I responded out loud or in my head, but I remember my eyes being like, oh my God, there's a voice. And at no point was I like, I'm schizophrenic, I'm hearing voices, because I understood what channeling was. I'd paid attention, I'd consumed enough content to kind of understand. And so I wasn't like scared or anything. And these experiences happened before I did the channeling that I read to you guys already, the one that I did in the car on the way to visit my mom. So I'm backtracking to kind of give you the lead up of how my clairaudience turned on. And so I heard that the British voice, it was very calm. It sounded very much like a professor guide. And it's so cool because last year, the voice came back again and we reconnected when I was in nature walking. But anyway, so I heard the voice and he was like, I was like, hi, I don't think I asked who you are. I think I was like, why are you talking to me? Like, what are we doing here? And he was like, I'm here to help you remember who you are, to teach you to remember who you are and to just help teach you and guide you. And I was like, oh, thanks. Cool. And that was pretty much the conversation. And I was like, this is great. And then I think the next experience was I was sleeping and I was awakened. It was still dark outside, so it was the middle of the night, very early morning, and I heard my voice whispered loudly from the foot of my bed, Ashley, and it woke me up. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. Nope. I used to be the kid who was scared that something was under their bed. I would like run and jump onto my bed because I was so worried something was going to like stick their arm out and try to drag me down. And so any kind of scary crap that happens to me when I'm in my bed or around my bed is a no. That's an immediate no for me. And so I was like wide awake and I just like kind of pulled my covers up like, oh my God, like they were this shield of protection. And this is in 2020. Like I was an adult and I was just like, I don't know what to do with myself here. So, and I just kind of, I think I ended up falling back asleep, but I was like, this is not here for this. And so I had some very jarring experiences that I thought were negative, and they weren't negative. It was me tuning in to my guides for the most part. That's what that was. And I just, it's so interesting because when you're in a good place, when you're vibing high, when you're relaxed, when you're just having fun with it, you're not attracting negative energies. You're attracting positive energies. Life is like a mirror. Your energy is like a mirror. And I was having fun with it. I was loving life. I was having a good time. And so I want to talk about some of the ways that clairaudience or clear hearing can show up for people. So I'm going to go into about 10 ways. So one of the ways is hearing voices or sounds. And so, excuse me, you can hear a voice inside of your mind that is distinctly different from your own. So it won't sound like your thoughts. And then this voice will offer you guidance and messages. It's not a bad voice that's like telling you to do bad things. I think that might be one of the distinctive characteristics of like schizophrenia. And then, and you know what? Actually, while I'm on that topic, something just reminded me, do we really know what schizophrenia is? I'm not a medical professional, and I'm trigger warning because if you have someone in your family, I actually do have a family member with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And I know that there are conversations, and I want to be very sensitive about this because I don't want to offend anybody, but I do want to talk about it. So from what I understand, schizophrenia can sometimes, and I'm not a medical professional, so I'm trying to like tiptoe around this, but schizophrenia can sometimes be just somebody who is so sensitive and has no idea about their sensitivity, and they receive so much information that it's overwhelming and it throws them off and can create distortions, I guess. And so then other people tell you you're crazy, and so you believe you're crazy because you're different from other people. I don't have a lot of experience with schizophrenia though, so I can't really speak much to it, but I've heard that some of these mental illnesses, like how do we know that as a society we weren't just like, oh, these people are different because we were so disconnected from our spirituality that we condemned them to being crazy and or condemned. You know what I'm trying to say. I don't think that was the right way to say that, but so I want to stop saying like I wasn't schizophrenic because I'm saying it in a way that I'm speaking about something I don't know enough to speak about, basically. So I just wanted to correct myself. Okay, so having an inner voice is one of the ways that you can experience clairaudience. So it'll be a voice inside your head or your mind that's distinctly different from your own voice, your own thoughts, and it'll offer you guidance and messages. Or, I'm looking at my notes. If you're watching this, I'm like, my face is to the side instead of forward because I'm looking at my notes. Or you can hear your name being called when no one's around, or hear conversations or whispers that other people don't hear. So sometimes when you have clairaudience, you will just, it's like you're constantly picking up, have you ever been on the phone and like or a walkie-talkie and the signals just like cross a little bit and you can hear conversations that aren't the ones you're a part of? It's like that. It can also happen where you hear a song or a melody in your head all of a sudden. So a song will pop into your head and it'll carry a specific message or emotion. And I experienced all of these, which is why I'm talking about them. I had a dream the other night, and I'm going to do a podcast episode about that because it was related to ETs and abduction. It was an ET abduction, guys. It's so interesting. Spoiler. No, not spoiler alert. Tease. It's like a tease trailer. Anyway, though, and I was tapping in, I was talking to my higher self and my guides about it, and a song popped into my head, and I was like, huh, out of nowhere, a song I have not thought about or heard in over a decade. Actually, no, I've heard it. It's a very popular song, but it's Adele's Set Fire to the Rain. And so I had to go and look up the lyrics, I think a day or two later, because I was like, how does this message apply? Anyway, so you'll hear a song or a melody. My guides will often communicate with me like that. Like I'll get into the car and I will hear a very specific song on the radio that has a meaning for me, and I'll listen to specifically the lyrics where I pay attention, and it's a message. It's so cool. So if that happens, that's a way that you can experience clairaudience. Also, if you are a musician, you can receive like musical inspiration or sounds or tunes or words through your intuition, and that's also clairaudience. You can also hear like a sudden clear voice that warns you of danger or guides you to take a specific action. You can get regular guidance about advice, or advice like about your life decisions or your spiritual path. And like you'll have the same voice coming in, and you'll notice that it becomes like a consistent thing in your life. Clairaudience. Telepathic communication. So being able to receive messages from spiritual beings or your guides in a very clear auditory way. That's another sign of clairaudience. Being able to hear the voice of a loved one who has passed away, and they're usually going to be providing comforting messages. And it's when my mom passed, that happened. It was like, it would happen randomly out of nowhere. I would be like walking into my closet and I would hear her voice, and she'd be like, "Hey, honey head." And it wasn't my thoughts and my voice. It was my mom's voice, her energy. It's really cool. Also being able to hear sounds in nature that convey messages to you. So hearing natural sounds like wind or water or birds, even when they're not physically present, and that conveys a specific message, which is interesting. It can convey messages through like specific meanings or specific feelings. Also hearing footsteps, knocking, or other unexplained noises that hold significance for you in some kind of way. So I've had that experience where like I'd be alone in the house, and then I would hear footsteps and I would think somebody was there, and I would also see things. And then there would be nobody there. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't really ever figure out how to understand what those messages meant, but it happened, and it was a bit creepy at the time. I think I was a teenager when that was happening. And I was like, what is going on? I had no idea any of these were clairsenses, no idea what clairsenses were at that time. You can also hear words in meditative states. So when you're in meditation, you might hear a word or a few words or phrases that offer you insights or answer your questions. And that can happen. I think that's a more common way to experience clairaudience. You can also hear clear messages or conversations in your dreams that give you guidance and clarity, like when you wake up. That one I think is also pretty common. Like, so if you're having a dream and you have a conversation with somebody, and you wake up and you remember the conversation you had with that person, likely that might be a message. And that's why it's really great to have a dream journal, so that you can kind of keep track of those things. Honestly, man, I'm saying so much. Honestly, having a journal just to kind of like take notes for any kind of intuitive insights you're getting from any of your intuitive senses can be really helpful. I keep a lot of journals. I love writing. I love documenting things. And it's really cool to go back and read channeled messages I've gotten. And I was talking to somebody, and we were like, we need to share our channeled messages that we've gotten over the years, because I don't always share them. And a lot of them are like for the collective or apply to the collective. And I was just scared to come out and share stuff, because I was like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm crazy, but hey, I'm out here now. We're doing it. We're out here doing it. So Another one is, I've got 4 more, receiving names or places. So you can hear the names of people or places that are relevant to your life or your spiritual journey. So if they just like pop into your head or you hear them, I think just popping into your head is more clairvoyance. But if you can hear, all of a sudden you hear a name or you hear a place, that is clairaudience. Anytime you're hearing something, essentially, it's going to be clairaudience. You can also receive like these auditory clues about future events or situations. So just a sentence about something that's going to happen, or a phrase that's related to something that's about to happen, or a name about somebody you know that you're going to interact with when something is about to happen. It's just, you'll get these little like cues, auditory cues with clues. Creative inspiration is another way that you can experience clairaudience. And that happens in that, as an artist or a writer or a creative or a creator, you might hear ideas or phrases that inspire you to create a specific kind of work, whatever your medium is. And it'll feel like it's coming from somewhere else. And this has happened to me before. Like, I'll just get this intuitive inspiration where, I mean, most of these have happened to me, but some of them memories are popping into my head, which is why I keep saying it like that, where I'll suddenly be like, I need to paint this thing. When I'm meditating and I'm actually taking more time to create that space for myself just to do it, it happens more. And I was taking a bath one night with crystals and doing my thing. I was doing my spiritual hygiene and re-energizing myself, filling my cup. And I got this image. I am one of my guides, or one of the beings that I'm connected with, was communicating with me, and they came in as this blue ball of light. And it was so wild. I'm going to tell you guys this story because it's so interesting. The synchronicities are so cool. It just came in. I saw it come in, like, my eyes were open, but then and this was my clairvoyance that kicked on. I know where this is a clairaudience episode, but I want to talk about this experience. So whatever, there are no rules here. And I had my eyes open, and then this blue light started coming toward me. So I closed my eyes so that I could kind of focus on it. And then I heard it, and they started kind of like conversing with me. I don't remember really what it is, but it was kind of like an introduction, like, hey, we're here. And I got an Akashic Records reading. It was a parallel life Akashic Records reading. Super cool. By Scarlett. If you're interested in it, just message me and I'll send you her information. She's amazing. And it's such a cool Akashic Records reading. There's so many different kinds of Akashic Records readings. Like, it's just such a vast modality. Anyway, I got a reading from her, and she gave me this, like, a few messages before we actually got into the reading that she'd received, when she was kind of like, she goes in and she'll pull some cards, and then during the reading she's just live channeling as she's tapping into your parallel lives. But she told me that, oh no, it wasn't during my Akashic Records reading. I also got a numerology write-up from her. And in the numerology write-up, which was wildly accurate, holy crap, I still go back to that thing, and I got it a couple years ago, I think. It was so good. Oh my gosh. Or did I get it last year? 2023. Anyway, she told me that she connected with these higher frequency beings called the blue light. What? Get out of town. Get out of town. And I was flabbergasted. And she was like, they're here to guide you and teach you. And like, there's a whole paragraph about it. And then a message from them. It was about following my path. It's so interesting, and them helping me and me having to like consent to get the help. It's so interesting. It was really interesting. But I love synchronistic things like that. So anyway, and then and the whole point of me mentioning that story was because I had this insane, like, insatiable urge that just kept on nagging at me, like having water dripping on your forehead. Like, oh my God, I just need to do this thing, where I needed to paint the blue light. And I started the painting, and then I never finished it, but that's neither here nor there. It's still sitting on my floor. It's just a canvas with a very dark background and a hole. And I never filled in the hole with the right colors. Whatever. Okay, so another way that you can experience clairaudience is through hearing frequencies or tones. So if you hear high-pitched frequencies or tones, they can correspond with energetic shifts. And this can happen a lot when you're awakening, or you're moving into a new chapter or a new phase or up leveling. But You can also sense when energies change. You'll notice like a frequency in your ear. There are actually a few different reasons that you'll hear frequencies. It's some of the most common ones are like you'll notice that frequencies are changing. So like your guides pop in, or a spirit or energy pops in, you'll notice it changes the frequency of the area because there's another resonance there. And so everything is in flow. And so if you are clairaudient, you'll hear the change in frequency. Man, I think I was going to say something else. And it can sound like ringing in your ears. And the way that you know that it's different from tinnitus is you'll pick up different tones. Like, actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know everything about tinnitus. But for me, I notice that sometimes it'll be a very low tone. Sometimes it's a super, super, super high pitched tone. And it just depends. And as you work with this, you can distinguish between like what the different tones mean, pay attention to what you're doing when it comes in, pay attention to what's happening around you. Maybe you're watching a movie and somebody just said something and what they said was a message for you. So tones can also be like, hey, pay attention to this right now, kind of a deal. So it's like I said, these things manifest differently for everyone. And that's why it's so cool. I'm about to do a shameless plug. I love the Akashic Soul Blueprint readings because they give you very specific information about how these things show up for you. So I'm giving you a list of 10, but like 4 of them happened to me a lot. And I'm being random. I don't know how many of them happened to me a lot. I didn't actually count, but I don't experience the whole list all the time. There are some of the things on the list that happen to me all the time. And it's just like the normal for me. And so I think it can be really helpful if you get a heads up, because when we do that Akashic Soul Blueprint reading, I'll tell you your gift. I'll tell you your gifts, and then what your dominant clairsense is, and then whether you have a secondary and then even maybe a third dominant clairsense, and whether or not they're developed or undeveloped. And developed means that you didn't have to work at it. It just is there and on and strong and alive. Undeveloped means you're going to have to practice and give yourself permission, tap into it. You might have some like limiting beliefs or blocks, or you may have suppressed it because of some past life stuff, or maybe when you were younger, you didn't get validated when you shared an experience. And so you were like, oh, shutting that down. I don't want to be different. So I love these readings and we do get into that. We get into your past lives, and we can, like, it has come up before for people where they're like, they have suppressed one of their gifts and they're not using it because they were ostracized or killed in a past life for expressing it. And so they're scared now. And so they've just kind of shut it off and disconnected themselves from it. And so getting that information can be very activating because it empowers you to be able to make the choice consciously. Like, I do want to experience that gift because in this life, I know nobody's going to kill me for, delivering my channeled messages in a podcast. Yes, all of that was my personal experience. So yeah, that's why I like the readings. And then we also talk about, like, I list out how you experience each of the clairsenses specifically. It's really cool. It's so helpful because then you can actually really tap into the way that you're experiencing your gift and not just go off of like how you see other people experiencing their gifts and what other people are doing. So the last one is for like a sign that you're clairaudient is, or how it can manifest for you. Either one, they both apply. Is hearing guidance for everyday decisions, like which route to take or what to focus on or how to approach a problem. And this won't necessarily be in another voice. I get this a lot, and it'll be a feeling, like it's not a feeling, but I will have a feeling. Usually when one of my clairsenses is activated, it's accompanied by another clairsense. So that's why I say a feeling, because it's normally I will experience 2 or 3 clairsenses at a time. And then I just put the information from them together into one message, essentially. And so I will just have these, like, it's like I'll hear guidance from myself. It's like I'll hear myself talking to myself, kind of a deal. And I was actually just talking to Golden V, about this. I always want to promote her. She's so amazing, guys. Listen to her podcast, Dimensions of the Soul. Check her out. Get a reading from her. She is the most amazing, talented psychic. Just chef's kiss. Wow. Chef's kiss, V. Shout out to you. You're freaking phenomenal. Love you so much. But we were talking about talking to yourself. She posted something, I think, and I like commented on it, or I sent her a DM about it. And it was saying that like having conversations with yourself is a way to get intuitive messages. And when I messaged her, because I was like, I do this all the time. I love that. And she was like, yeah, a lot of the time it's us talking to our higher selves, and it's a way for us to talking to yourself is actually a way to listen to yourself. I think that was the thing that she posted. And she was like, yeah, a lot of the time it's your higher self that's giving you advice, but it feels like you're talking to yourself, but it's a way of you to like listen and interact with your higher self and receive that information. So I thought that was super cool. So if you are also someone who talks to yourself, shout out to you, because I'm team talk to yourself. I do it so much. Like I'll do it in different accents. I'll have full on conversations. Like, and I do it a lot, like in the mirror in the bathroom. I don't, I think I'd like to see my facial expressions, and like I'm very animated and expressive with my face. And I don't know, I'm also super visual. And so I like to have a conversation and look at the person I'm talking to, even if it's myself. Oh, just sharing all my stuff. What else was I gonna say? Oh, I was in Target one time and I talk to myself so much that I don't realize I'm doing it. And I was in Target in an aisle talking to myself about products I was looking at. And then toward the end of the conversation, the full conversation I was having out loud to myself, I was like, oh my God, I need to stop. And even that part I was saying out loud, I was like, this is out of control and ridiculous. I need to stop talking to myself. And I started laughing because I was like, I wonder if anybody on another aisle heard me, because there was nobody on my aisle, but who knows who was on the aisle ahead or behind me. Anyway, whatever. I didn't see anybody. Nobody came up and like tried to drag me away in a straitjacket. So it was fine. But I was like, I need to get it together and maybe be a little more cognizant of when I'm having these like conversations with myself. Anyway, all right, guys, I did not realize this episode was going to be almost an hour long. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I forgot to put my notes in about what I say to close off the episode. But you know what? That's okay. We're keeping it casual today. I keep wanting to say we're keeping it cash. I was talking to myself before this episode, and I was like, I'm just going to tell them that I'm keeping it cash. And I was like, keeping it cash. Maybe I should say casual. I am so in my head about stuff. I need to go meditate. That's what I need. I need to create some space. Okay. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me, for listening to this podcast. If you like this episode or you learned something from it, please share it with somebody else who you think it would benefit. Message me about it. I would love to hear if you have had any of these clairaudient experiences and then you were like, oh, no way, I didn't know that was clairaudience. Like DM me, message me, email me, send me a message about it. I'm so interested in what your experiences are and your guys' stories. So thank you so much for being here. Reach out. You know where to find me. Or if you don't, just in case you don't, you can find me at Spirituality with Ashley on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And then here's the podcast. And you can always comment below the podcast or reach out to me via the contact form on my website. If you're interested in getting a reading or any sessions, check out my website. If you're on Instagram, you can go to the link in my bio. And until next time, keep dreaming big and believing in yourself, living your best life. And until next time, I will see you in the next episode.